Good morning, everyone. Worship service brought to you from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. Our service this morning is our annual Fire Communion service, during which we say good the year ahead. I'm Erica Caldwell, and I'll be helping to lead our service this morning. I recently joined this congregation, actually after moving back to York County from Indiana. However, I have been a UU for about 15 years or so. I first found Unitarian Universalism when I was at one of the lowest points in my life, actually. I was serving in the Navy during Operation Iraqi Freedom, and I was really struggling with the morality of my service. In that first lively UU church in Norfolk, Virginia, I found a home. I found a place where our most fundamental value, my most fundamental value, was just made crystal clear, that we are all worthy. No matter who we are, no matter what we believe, we are all worthy. This Unitarian Universalist congregation is welcoming of all seekers after truth, beauty, justice, and compassion, cherishing our diversity of race, age, gender, sexual identity and orientation, religious background, and perspectives on life. We come together again this morning for worship and fellowship as we greet old friends and new visitors alike. Although we can't be together in person, we gather together in spirit and in community each and every Sunday. Now, if you're a first-time visitor to our Zoom services, please feel free to introduce yourself by writing your name in the chat box and anything else you'd like to share. Everyone is also invited to type in the chat box any matters of the heart that you would like to share with the congregation today. Reverend Terry will read them later in our service. Now, as is customary, whenever Unitarian Universalists gather together, we begin by lighting a candle. Our candle flame represents the flaming chalice that is the symbol of the living tradition of our faith. We also invite everyone at home to light a candle as we share our chalice lighting words. Our chalice lighting words today are by Reverend Terry. We light this chalice not just to warm a cold winter's day, not just to reflect its light through our windows, although we light our chalice to do both of those things. We also light this chalice to remind ourselves that this hour of worship is a holy place. We light it so that we can share a sacred tradition with our visitors, and we light it as a symbol of the covenant we share among ourselves, as well as the covenant our congregation shares with Unitarian Universalists everywhere. A covenant to work together for love, peace, justice, and mutual respect and understanding during each and every year.
Come, whoever you are, start, you'll cue me? You'll give me a thumb? You for being part of our service, this first January service of the year, this first service of the year, in which we say goodbye to the year just past, the year of 2020, and we look forward to the year ahead, 2021. Like the Roman god Janus, we have two faces. We are looking forward, and we're also looking back today. We grew tired of 2020 very quickly, I think, and we are looking forward to the new year with compassion and gratitude, courage, and some optimism. It is time to rebuild our confidence in the healing powers of medicine, time to rebuild our trust in the fairness of our democracy, and our belief and faith in the grace of the human spirit, the beauty of love. There will be times in 2021 when our faith will be tested, that we know, when we will be disappointed by the acts of our fellow citizens, some of our fellow human beings who control wealth and power. We will have moments in 2021 when the destruction of our beautiful blue-green earth will give us concern and fear, make us wonder whether anything will survive just a few generations from now. I know these thoughts sound depressing as we enter a new year, but we enter the new year with courage and with strength and with optimism and again, gratitude. We will keep on moving forward, never turning back. We will continue to heed the call of love and the call of justice. Our opening words today are a poem by Unitarian Universalist minister Reverend Edward Searle. It's called Always There Is a Beginning. Always there is a beginning, a new day, a new month, a new season, a new year. Forever the old passes away, a newness emerges from the richness that was. Nothing is ever lost in the many changes time brings. What was in some way will be, though changed in form. Know this. This moment is a beginning, and your lives, individually and together, are full of richness, of freshness, of hope, and of promise. May it be so. Our first hymn this morning is a very old favorite of ours. It's number 1064, Blue Boat Home, in which we think about casting questions into the deep. The words will appear on your screen, and I invite you to sing along with our song by Peter Mayer at home, Blue Boat Home.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we keep to the waves upholding me. Hail the great winds urging me on. Greet the infinite sea before me. Sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms. Never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. This morning, I had an opportunity to choose from many different stories to share with you, but I thought this maybe was perhaps the most appropriate. Months ago, in the deepest of the ocean, there was a little fish. And that fish opened its mouth and let a bubble go. Now, at the same moment, there was a cloud high above the ocean, which let a raindrop go. Now, way down, that bubble started its journey towards the surface. And high in the sky, that raindrop also started its own journey. Would you be afraid? I might be afraid, but nothing can hurt a raindrop. Nothing can hurt a bubble. They belong where they are going. For a long time, that bubble drifted up through the water without a thought, bumping into a seal belly, bouncing off a seaweed leaf, rolling through the blue, floating toward that big ceiling of light. And the raindrop was spinning dizzy down, sliding along the shoulder of the wind, tumbling toward that silver field of water. They took so long falling down and soaring up that they grew. And the bubble swelled and filled with light. The raindrop gathered ready and round. Somehow, inexplicably, like a miracle, they were aimed for the exact same moment in time. And they got there together. But then what were they? They were, well, the bubble opened up and became the whole sky. And the raindrop, well, it opened and it was the entire ocean. They were there, sky and ocean, turning right where they belonged. And you and I, we got here together too, didn't we? We got here safe in the silver light where we belong. Blessed be. Amen.
I'm going to jump ahead and express gratitude and joy for the amazing singing voice of Matt Shinneman. What a gift he brings to our congregation in his voice and musical talent, in addition to so many other talents that Matt brings. And I'd also like to share with you my incredible gratitude to Gretchen Decker, who indulged me in playing my favorite winter song, The Rose. Just remember, in the winter, far beneath the bitter snow, lies the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose. Thank you, Gretchen, for recording that today. And I'm so grateful also that Erica Caldwell is joining us this morning. Erica is a new member of our congregation, and she's brought some joy and life to our service this morning. And in a few minutes, she's going to share a reading from Tolkien's novel, The Hobbitt. So grateful to all three of you. But first, it's the time in our service when we ask you to make a financial contribution to our congregation to offset the costs of keeping the lights on and doing all the incredible things that we do. Your contributions are always generously given and gratefully received. And as is common with Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country, we have a tradition of sharing our Sunday morning offering plate with other organizations. And the organization who is our Share the Plate recipient in the month of January is Big Brothers and Big Sisters of York and Adams counties. Big Brothers and Big Sisters of York and Adams counties provides mentors, adult mentors, to work with children and youth, to help them stay out of trouble, to give them advice and guidance on life's journey. This morning, our service is dedicated to the journey, the hero's journey. And so many young people who set out on their journey of life need help and guidance from older people, and Big Brothers and Big Sisters of York and Adams counties provides that help and guidance. They have offices here in York on West Market Street and also an office in Gettysburg. So I invite you this morning to please be as generous as you can in making a contribution to our offering for our church and for our Share the Plate partner. Our offering will now be gratefully collected and received, and instructions for giving will appear on your screen very shortly.
Our reading today is from The Hobbitt by J.R.R. Tolkien. Bilbo had many hardships and adventures before he got back. The wild was still the wild, and there were many other things in it in those days besides goblins. But he was well guided and well guarded. The wizard was with him, and he was never in great danger again. Anyway, by midwinter, Gandalf and Bilbo had come all the way back along both edges of the forest to the doors of Bjorn's house. And there, for a while, they both stayed. Yuletide was warm and merry there, and men came from far and wide to feast at Bjorn's bidding. The goblins of the Misty Mountains were now few and terrified, and hidden in the deepest holes they could find. And the wargs had vanished from the woods so that men went abroad without fear. Bjorn indeed became a great chief afterwards in those regions, and ruled a wide land between the mountains and the wood. And it is said that for many generations, the men of his line had the power of taking bear shape, and some were grim men and bad, but most were in heart like Bjorn, if less in size and strength. In their day, the last goblins were hunted from the misty mountains, and a new peace came over the edge of the wild. It was spring, and a fair one with mild weathers and a bright sun before Bilbo and Gandalf took their leave. And though he longed for home, Bilbo left with regret, for the flowers of the garden were in springtime no less marvelous than in high summer. At last they came up the long road and reached the very pass where goblins had captured them before. But they came to that high point at morning, and looking backward, they saw a white sun shining over the outstretched land. There behind lay Mirkwood, blue in the distance and darkly green at the nearer edge, even in spring. And there far away was the lonely mountain on the edge of eyesight. On its highest peak, snow yet unmelted was gleaming pale. So comes snow after fire, and even dragons have their ending, said Bilbo, and he turned his back on his adventure. I wish now only to be in my own armchair, he said. Thus ends our reading.
Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone, turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and sword have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green, and trees and hills they long have known. Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, roads go loud and never star, yet feet that wandering have gone, yet feet that wandering have gone, ties that fire and sword have seen, and eyes that fire and sword of stone, and more in the meadows green, and trees and hills they long have green, and trees and hills they long have known. Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon, under mountains in the moon.
In just a few minutes, we will have an opportunity to share with one another the things that we would like to leave behind in 2020 and some of the hopes, aspirations, and dreams we have for the coming year of 2021. Our fire communion this morning is particularly heavy this year, I think, heavier than most years, given the year that we have just gone through with the COVID-19 pandemic and the summer of anti-police violence and Black Lives Matter events that have stirred our hearts, and the suffering of so many African American people at the hands of our law enforcement agencies has caused us to grieve and be concerned anew. This year was a tough year to live through, and so our fire communion this morning, to me anyway, seems just a little heavier than it might otherwise have been. The ritual of the fire communion is an important moment in the life of the congregation. It's an opportunity for us to remind ourselves that by looking inward, we can change our perspective on the outside world. It's a chance to engage in a spiritual exercise that will help to keep us grounded in the year ahead. The turn of the year is an opportunity to reimagine ourselves in light of what we have learned and experienced in the year just gone by, but in all of the years we've lived through up until this point. It's an opportunity to make new decisions and fresh choices, while hoping that we don't get swept away again by something unexpected. It's also a time to gather our energy and our spirits in order to be ready for the challenges that lie ahead. And as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, there will be some challenges in the year ahead. So today, we think about new beginnings while the earth sleeps. It is a time for rest and reflection, renewal, and renewed imagination. Time of year, we pause, but we don't stop. Today would have been J.R.R. Tolkien's 129th birthday. I wasn't aware of that when I first envisioned our service today around the hero's journey again, the story of Bilbo Baggins, the Hobbitt. But when I read that Tolkien's birthday was today, I knew that our service was meant to be. Tolkien, as most of you know, is the author of some modern versions of a very old theme, the hero's journey. He wrote a book called The Hobbitt, which Erica just read you an excerpt from, and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I remember reading those books when I was 17 or 18 years of age, and I think that's probably the best time in life to read them. Maybe there's no best time, maybe there's only good times to read them, but for me, my late teens was the perfect time to read these wonderful books. A time when I was still very much a child. I still believed in the fantasy of goblins and dwarves and all things. They still appealed to me. But yet it was a time in my life when I was about to set off on my own life's journey. And the idea of setting off into the forest on an adventure was so appealing to me. It filled me with excitement. And I've carried The Hobbit with me throughout my entire life, actually. The story of The Hobbit is a very simple one. Bilbo Baggins is a hobbit who lives in a fabulous apartment deep inside a hill. Bilbo unwittingly allows 13 dwarves and a wizard, Gandalf, to take him on a journey to reclaim for the dwarves the Lonely Mountain. Gandalf the wizard knows of a secret door to enter the Lonely Mountain through which Bilbo could steal in and reclaim it. You see, the Lonely Mountain had been taken over and occupied by a very fierce dragon. And so they set off, 13 dwarves, Bilbo the Hobbit, and Gandalf the wizard. On their journey to the mountain, they encounter dangerous trolls and a man named Beorn, who has the ability to turn himself into a bear. They're captured by nasty goblins, they make their escape, and they're chased deep underground. And it's there that Bilbo finds the ring the ring that has the power to make its bearer invisible. There's been so many times in my life when I would have given anything to have had a ring just like that. And I'm sure many of you also have felt the same way. Wouldn't it be just so great to have a ring we could put on and go poof and disappear? Sadly, it's just a fantasy. Soon after finding the ring, Bilbo encounters Gollum. Gollum is a serpent-like, greasy creature that lives in a lake underneath a mountain. And he's an evil creature who's very threatening to Bilbo. I shall always remember my whole life Gollum saying, "My precious, my precious, my precious," when he sees something that he wants. And I remember being at meetings when I was in my former professional life as an attorney, sometimes around people that I thought were greedy, and thinking of those words, this person is just like Gollum. Bilbo escapes Gollum by putting the ring on and becoming invisible. And eventually they go through the forest of Milkwood, through many adventures, and arrive at the Lonely Mountain. Wizard, dwarves, and Hobbit. And Bilbo enters the Lonely Mountain through the secret door, and all sorts of adventures ensue. The dragon, of course, is slain eventually. And at the end of the story, there's the giant battle, the battle of the 5 armies, and some of the dwarves die. And at the end of it, Bilbo and Gandalf leave the dwarves in charge of the Lonely Mountain to reclaim their ancient lands. And off they set back on their journey for home. Bilbo has learned much from his adventures, and importantly, he's learned much about himself. He learns that he has the right stuff to be a hero, just an ordinary and simple hobbit, the hero, after a journey, an adventure, unsought and unexpected. I've been reminded of the novel several times this past year as the COVID pandemic and all the other things that have beset our country have unfolded, because we are all on a journey, it seems to me. And ordinary people have been doing extraordinary things this past year. Our healthcare workers, our doctors, our nurses have been doing amazing things and still are in the face of incredible, incredible pressure and stress. And it's ordinary people like us who are the heroes in real life. Think about it. Just a few months ago, there we were going about our lives, and all of a sudden in March, shut down. We've had to no longer take our children to school, but homeschool them. We've had to work from home. So many of our fellows have lost their jobs, are hungry, and yet we endure. We endure and we continue because we are heroes and we have hope. Let's take a moment also to acknowledge that the year 2020 brought joy too. How much joy there must have been to spend time at home with our children, time we would not have spent otherwise. There will be happy memories for years to come, I'm sure, from some of the things that took place in the year just gone by. And maybe some good will come out of the pandemic. Maybe fewer people will commute to work going forward, and there will be less pollution, less stress on our bodies and on our environment. And yet, the COVID-19 pandemic will not be over for several months, although the end is in sight with the new vaccines. Racism and oppression of minorities and the LGBT community is not going to go away simply because of a new date on the calendar. And the economic damage to our communities, our infrastructure, and the environment over the last several years is ongoing. Last year, around this time, I remember saying, "Happy New Year" to people. Happy New Year. And in retrospect, those words now seem somewhat empty, somewhat shallow. And so instead, as we go into the new year, instead of, or as well as saying Happy New Year, I'd like to share two other things with you. Thing one, you're not alone. Know that. This community is here for you. This is a caring and loving community, our congregation. You have been there for each other for 50 years and counting. And you've been there for each other this past year. We've all been there for each other during the COVID crisis. And you will not be alone in the year ahead. We are together and will be. Thing two, some advice. With all of the stuff that's going on, and I know just next week we are worried about what will happen to our democracy, at least some of us are. I know I am. But stay in touch with your spiritual practices. Try to find some place, something to do that feeds your soul no matter what. For me, my spiritual practice is prayer. I pray all the time. And I take walks around Lake Redmond and Lake Williams 3 or 4 times a week when the weather's good. That is my spiritual practice. I try to write poetry from time to time. And lately I've rekindled an old hobby of mine, working with wood, and I've been getting some rough sawn boards and an old plane that I bought for $14 in an antique store in Columbus. And I've been planing rough wood smooth, just as a spiritual practice. Whatever it is for you, do it. Find that place in your heart, that altar within you, and communicate with that which is holy. Take that with you into the new year. We are all in the process of becoming. We are all on a journey together. We are all heroes. And even though the end of our journey is not yet in sight with this coming year, it will come. I'd like to share with you a poem that was written by Tolkien in The Hobbitt. It comes at the end of the book. Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and sword have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green, and trees and hills they long have known. May it be so. Blessed be. And we're going to continue now, taking our normal order of service out of order this week. I'd like to take this time to share our matters of the heart, our joys, our sorrows, joys and concerns. And after that will come our fire communion. Our fire communion will be in 2 parts. The first part will be a reprise of the thoughts you expressed on pieces of paper last year, and which I promised to keep and did, and it will be a chance for you to look at what you wrote last year and also to think about the things that you would like to let go of this year. But first, our matters of the heart. It's the time to write in the chat box the things that you would like to share with the community. I will read them aloud here from the pulpit. And also this Sunday, I'm going to invite you to do something that we do from time to time when we meet in person, and that is to call out the names of those people you're carrying in your heart, people you're thinking of right now, people you love, people you miss. And since we can't call them out into the space of the sanctuary, I'm going to invite you also to write their names into the chat box for everyone to see, everyone that you can just share, everyone you're thinking of, people you miss. I do have a matter of the heart to share. Erica's going to light the candle as we go. We'll see how this works. And as always, we light one candle for all of our unspoken joys and concerns. We hold these names, the joys and sorrows, in care and compassion. May the joys be magnified and the sorrows diminished by our sharing. Thank you, everybody who wrote in the chat box, for sharing those joys and concerns. And thank you, Erica, for lighting our candles. And we will continue now with our annual fire communion ritual. As I mentioned earlier, last year at this time, we were gathered here in the sanctuary, and I invited people to write on pieces of notepaper their thoughts that they would like to leave behind in 2020, thoughts from 2019 and before, and also their thoughts for the year 2020, which is now just ended. And in a few moments, we're going to show all of those notes that you wrote on the screen so that you can read them and reflect upon them. And as you read those, I'm going to invite you to think about the things that you would like to say goodbye to in 2020. And we will go from the screen with last year's comments on to a screen that shows a fire. And you can write in the chat box what you would like to write, or write down on slips of paper at home, or just keep in your mind and thoughts the things that you would like to set fire to while you watch the video of the fire flames this morning. And then I'll ask you also to write in the chat box those things that you would like to see in the coming year of 2021. I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but I know that we can do it. It'll go just fine. And after we've finished the fire communion service, I'd like to invite us all to share a moment of quiet reflection and meditation and prayer. So with that, I'm going to ask Doug to put on the screen the thoughts from last year. Let you read them. to Robert Felton for taking the words that I sent him this past week and putting together those wonderful, wonderful slides, and just standing here reading them brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Robert, for doing that for us and sharing it with us this morning. And so now we come to the second part of our fire communion ritual. This is the part where we will show you a video of something burning, some wood shavings that I took off one of those pieces of wood that I was telling you about with my $14 hand plane. We will set fire to those and you will see the burning. And while you're watching that, I'm going to invite you just to write into the chat the things that you would like to bring forward to 2021. If there are things that you'd like to share, that you'd like to say goodbye to in 2020, feel free to write those also, but know that in a ritualistic way, we are burning them. So you don't need to repeat them if you don't feel comfortable, but they will be burned symbolically in our fire. And so with that, I'm going to invite Doug to put the video up of the burning wood shavings, and I will look for the aspirations for 2021 in the chat box. Thank you. And touch and hugs. Liz Goheen, continuing to follow the 4 agreements and to stop trusting the people who continue to hurt me and continue, I missed that one, and continue to reach out to those who truly love and honor me. Absolutely. May we allow our distrust of neighbors to burn away this year and instead kindle a fire of communication, cooperation, compassion, and community. Julie Amberg writes, a stronger UUCY than ever. Thank you, Julie. Susan Darling would like to be less disorganized. Sherry would like to return to some form of personal spiritual practice. Robert Felton, that we learn from our missing each other, learn to love more deeply. Absolutely. Oh, Mike Robinson and Fatima. Matching audio. Wow. Improve my listening and patience skills. Offer and share beauty and joy and love with those around me. I'm going to write that one down for sure. Sue Bupp would like a healing, safe and stable world. Janelle Mancuso writes, making the most of being present and grounded in the moment, finding the courage to love and accept others for who they are. And Shelley and Sam, rise above our obstacles, find joy in our everyday, and let our light shine for all to see. And you can continue to write into the chat box, and I'm going to cut and paste all of them into a document that I will save for the year, and we will revisit this next year. Kathleen Smith writes, reaching out more with kindness. I'm going to ask Doug now to pause. Oh, Martha Smith, pause, breathe, listen. Maybe we'll just go for one more minute, and then we'll go into a prayer. Susan Darling would like to share more joy. Mary Rosario would like to remove all prejudice and assumption about what others need. These are so great. Thank you all to everyone for sharing these thoughts. Charles Kress would like a stronger social justice movement within our hearts and our congregation. Thank you, Charles. Right with you. All right. We're going to move into a moment of prayer. I'm going to ask Doug to pause the video. But please continue to write. I see one from Avery, to be more decisive and release what does not serve the betterment of her life and community. Jane, less political division and more empathy. But we're going to continue with prayer. I will be so grateful for all of these, and you can continue to read them, of course, as people write into the chat box. Now I encourage you to join with me in a moment of prayer, meditation. Maybe close the video on your Zoom screen. Take a deep breath. Breathe in. Feel the air go into your lungs and breathe it out again. Do that a couple more times. Feel the energy gather in your beautiful heart, your loving mind, your amazing being. One more breath and let us pray or meditate together. Holy One, Spirit of life and love that is inside each and every one of us, that moves between us. As the new year begins, our hearts are heavy with grief, but also with gratitude. We grieve for the lost lives and the lost opportunities, for lost jobs and lost homes, for lost moments of sharing and celebration, for lost school days and lost classes, for lost hours of connection, for lost hugs. The year now ended saw violence and rage and assault on truth by those in power, and apathy and indifference to incredible suffering here and around the globe. Holy One, we are hungry and tired for restoration and reconciliation, for healing and grace in our lives and in our world. And yet we are grateful for all that we have, all of the comforts of our homes, our families and friends, and for this beloved Unitarian Universalist community of faith. All of these things bring us comfort and hope that 2021 will fall easier on everyone than the year just ended. May we have the courage and strength to endure the challenges of the year ahead. Holy One, Spirit of life and love, may it be so. Blessed be. Amen. leave these on the pulpit and you put yours on.
As our service comes to a close, we extinguish our chalice. The words for extinguishing our chalice were written by Reverend Amy Zucker Morgenstern, Parish Minister of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, California. A candle and a lantern burns against a dark set of window panes. Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us, in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparkling through space, one to another, connecting us invisibly, but palpably. We are one, and from every window, our light shines.
We end our service today with the words of the 13th century Sufi mystic Rumi. Some nights stay up until dawn, as the moon sometimes does for the sun. Be a full bucket, pulled up the dark way of a well, then lifted out into the light. Stars burn clear all night till dawn. Do that yourself, and a spring will rise in the dark with water your deepest thirst is for. Rumi. May your roots grow deep. May your branches grow wide. Our worship is over. Our service begins. Go in love. Go in peace. We'll see you next week when we launch our annual pledge drive. See you next Sunday. Have a great week, everybody, and thank you for joining us this Sunday morning.